Of what's happening between Myanmar and the authorities there and Rohingyas as well. Now, Azhar Vadi, who is a journalist with Salaam Media, has just come back from the Myanmar and Bangladesh border, and he's here to give us more insight on the humanitarian situation there. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much indeed. But just before we talk about the current or what you've seen there, take us back a little bit as to how the tension started.
Well, if you look at the history of what has happened there, the Rohingyas have a long-standing story to tell, in fact, going back 800 years. And this tension has been building up for some time, particularly in the last 30 years, where you had a move by the Myanmar authorities to remove the Rohingya people, particularly from the Rakhine state, where they believe, because they believe that these are actually Bengali or Bangladeshi people that have moved across the border in colonial periods. But if you trace the history back, you find that they are actually original inhabitants of that particular piece of land, and they belong there. That's their homes. They've got a long-standing history there. And this tension has been building up. There have been several clashes that have taken place over the last 5 years, particularly from 2012 onwards. There's been accusations about Muslim Rohingya men that have carried out a rape against a Buddhist woman, and that led to riots in 2012 where hundreds were killed thereafter. And then you had last year again an outbreak of violence following a rebel attack on a particular some police posts. And then this year again these ragtag rebels have attacked a few of the police barracks, and then you had again a mass unleashing of violence against the Rohingya people.
Yeah. And what have you seen between the borders?
Well, it's an absolutely horrendous state. It's devastating. I've been to many refugee camps around the world as a humanitarian journalist, but the living conditions right now for these people who are innocent, they've got really nothing to do with any of the fighting or anything of that sort, is beyond imagination. They are literally living in mud dumps because there's a monsoon that's playing itself out over the Indo-Pak area. So that rain is turning the ground on the border into mud pools, and you literally have people living in the mud. They have no shelter whatsoever. The little that they've given is just basically plastic with bamboo sticks to create some kind of a roof over their head. There's no sanitation at all. Babies are being born under these circumstances, and people are dying. I've seen men carrying their mothers on their back for 6-7 days on end as they walked from Myanmar. Old women being carried in baskets because they just can't walk at all. And then there's the stories and the trauma from the rape and the destruction and the killing and the violence that they've seen as they've come across. That's I don't think we can even begin to understand what these people have undergone.
Yeah, no, sure. It's devastating. I can imagine what you had to go through. Now there's this biometric process that's been introduced. Were you able to find out why? Do they require to carry with them the identity cards?
Well, the Rohingya people have been stateless since 1982. So by decree, they're not recognized as citizens of Myanmar. Newborn babies were not issued with birth certificates. And this is all part of a planned ethnic cleansing process. So you have what's called stigmatization, then you've got marginalization, isolation, and then finally systematic weakening of the society. So all of that falls into there to try and give scientific proof that you don't belong to this place, although historically you've been there for hundreds of years. And once you reach the point of systematic weakening where you deprive a society from education, from job opportunities, from access to resources, thereafter the next step, and this has been documented as early as 2015, that these 4 steps have already taken place amongst the Rohingya by the military of the Myanmar government. The next step is mass extermination, and this is exactly what we're seeing right now. And the following step beyond this will be simply to a systematic enactment, which is the erasure from history of this people. And if you can prove that scientifically you don't come from this particular area, then you are erased, and you out of the picture, you're gone, you don't exist anymore as a people. And that's exactly what's happening.
All right. And with thousands of Rohingyas, of course, arriving in Bangladesh, what is the government saying? Because I was reading that the government is saying that they cannot keep them there for forever.
Yeah, I mean, any government would be put under strain. Bangladesh itself is a poverty-stricken country. They mass poverty all over the place, lots of poor people. And all of a sudden, they're 160 million population, and now you've got close to 1 million Rohingya, 300,000 in the previous moves, and almost 500,000 now that have come across in a very short period of time. Yeah. So how do you deal with that? Where do they stay? How do they live? Who provides the food? And under those chaotic circumstances, when you just don't have the resources, the roads, the infrastructure, how do you get humanitarian aid to them effectively? It becomes very, very difficult on that government. And I think the Bangladeshis are trying as best as they can, but a lot more needs to be done. International pressure needs to be mounted. And from a humanitarian perspective, a lot more from the countries around, and neighboring particularly, need to come on board and help.
Yeah, but that humanitarian process, are there any humanitarian organizations on the ground assisting?
Yes, the UN has come in now in a big way. There have been organizations that have been there for quite some time, because we had last year already about 300,000 people that came across. So there are a few humanitarian organizations. The Turkish have played an important role. The Turkish government has announced that they'd pay for the humanitarian aid already. From the Turkish side, 1,000 tons have arrived. They pledge in another 10,000 tons of humanitarian aid. South African organizations like Salaam Media, from a humanitarian media perspective, there's the Al Imdad Foundation and a number of others that have already also tried to assist and have gone across and visited and filed reports. So they are, but unfortunately the amount of people, it's just such a staggering amount of people. It's difficult, and at the pace at which they come in, it's not over a year or 2 years like in some other conflict areas. It's in 2 or 3 weeks' time. And that is really the challenge that they face as NGOs.
But in terms of the international law, what does it say more so in terms of offering them refugee status? Is it not automatic that they are refugees under the international law?
Well, they are refugees now. I mean, Bangladesh has opened their borders. Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has said that they are welcome to stay for now. Yeah. But they are from a particular land. They cannot remain somewhere else. That's not their home. They need to go back to their history, their culture, their place, and international pressure needs to be mounted. Unfortunately,
isn't going to happen soon though?
I doubt it, because of the business deals that are underway. There's a huge gas and oil deposits under this particular piece of land, the Rakhine state, which many of the international companies, oil and gas companies, exploration companies, are already involved. Their governments are involved, and a lot of business deals are being made. And if you look at the geopolitical situation, it's again the East, Russia and China, versus the West in terms of who gets to play the power role. Myanmar is strategically located between China and the East and more of the West. And there's pipelines that are being developed right across that state. Sure. And all of this puts international governments in a very difficult position. Are you going to stand for morality, or are you going to stand for business and the deals?
Well, that's a big question, I suppose, but we'll leave it here for now. Thank you so much for sharing with us your experiences.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. That was Azhar Vadi, a journalist with Salaam Media, who has just come back from Myanmar and Bangladesh border. He's been talking to us about the refugee situation there with Rohingya people. We're taking a break here on Morning Live. Today is the 10th annual World Contraception Day, so we're talking contraceptions when you come back.